Are you looking to play a wildcard chip this week? Or are you unsure whether you should play it or not play it this week? Well, I've got a very special guest today to discuss all things Gameweek 28 wildcard. I've got a draft as well from them, and also we'll be looking at an optimal wildcard team as well, and also maybe discuss what other time frames can you play your wildcard chip if you still have it. Let's get straight into the video and discuss everything about Gameweek 28 and the wildcard chip. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another video. Today we're joined by FPL Kante, a good friend who's coming to discuss a wildcard draft. Now, currently, you're still in the decision making of whether you want to play the wildcard or not, I guess. Is that still the case, or have you?
Yeah, still kind of undecided. As I was saying yesterday, wildcard. I could still just take a few hits, or I could even free hit. So still kind of trying to decide what's the best option moving forward.
Yep, fair enough. All right, so we're going to look at a few potential ideas that you've got. We're going to look at your team. We'll look at FPL review and a potential the optimal way. And then we'll also look at maybe what draft you've made at the moment. But having said all of that, how are you doing? Having a really good season as well. How are you doing so far?
Yeah, it has been good. A little bit of up and down just before the World Cup. My rank kind of tanked big time, but I think since the restart, it has been going really good, really good actually. Last game week, I mean the running game week, we're still in the middle of game week 27. Could have been better if Salah scored the penalty and if the March owners, we got the March points. I think there was maybe overall like a 15-point swing. So kind of disheartened about that, but what can you do, right? Like the negative variances happen sometimes. So yeah, nothing much to do there. But yeah, overall, I'm happy with my season so far.
Fair enough. I'm still waiting for the solid match points. Hopefully.
I'm too, man.
Also the Europa League fixtures also to come, so that could potentially change what we're discussing right now, assuming that if there are injuries, that could change our opinions on what goes forward. But having said all of that, let's get started straight away into I basically added your team into FPL.team, and this is what it's looking like in Game Week 28. So you've kind of got a decision to be made because you have quite a few blank players. What's your current thoughts now?
Yes, I made two moves already, two early moves, I would say. I moved from Trent to Chilwell couple nights ago, and then I also moved on Haaland before his 5 goals in UCL to Watkins the day before. So yes, I still have a few blanks. I have McAllister blanking and Estupinian blanking and all the three blanking on my bench also. So basically I have 9 players. I don't know if I want to count Nyonto as like a playing player or not. So I would say I have about 8.5 players playing with a hit in Game Week 28 as of now, unless I may make another move. So that is my current team. I think the big miss this week is with respect to all the other wildcard or free hit teams would be Hurricane, right? So he is a big captaincy contender this week as well, right? I think it was already like 85% your last week. This week it's probably going to go to like 140, 150%. I'm thinking.
Probably.
So there's the one very big risk if I don't want to like use any chip at all this particular week, just for this week. Um, so that's the current thought process. I might take another hit for if I don't use any chip, of course. So I might take another hit for Neon to another striker. It could be Solanke. I was also thinking of maybe Sak. I cannot get to Havertz because I already am tripled up on Chelsea defense, Kepa, James, and Chilwell. Um, so that is the current process, thought process right now. I'll wait until probably as close as possible to the deadline to make my decision. Uh, but I am not completely opposed to just kind of navigate this week through hits, just with my transfers essentially.
Yep, fair enough. Okay, so those are the current thoughts at the moment. So, but we'll look at maybe some of the drafts that you sent me. So, first of all, we've got this is the review optimal wildcard basically based on your current team value. Um,
Correct.
what from this one, looking at it, for me at least, um, I'm looking at like maybe triple Newcastle and triple
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea defense, which at times I don't really like to triple up on a defense or even double up. I try to diversify risk at times whenever possible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but everything else, maybe I guess it looks good. The only thing you probably wonder is the route back to Haaland is not as easy on this. Maybe is my quick thoughts about it. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's not straightforward, and of course, you are kind of booking transfers to get Haaland back in. But I guess that's what you kind of sign up for, right? If you are wildcarding 28, because you want to maximize your bench boost 29. Um, Again, it's not that you cannot have Haaland for your bench boost. He can easily destroy Liverpool, and it's a home game, right? So that can definitely go all the wrong way. But if you are trying to maximize your bench boost, you would want as many double game weekers as you can, right? So that's basically the idea for game week 28 wildcarders, just to kind of differentiate a little more from wildcarders in 26 and 27, maximize on the double game weekers in 29 essentially. So yeah, but the this draft again, as you said, the triple Newcastle defense is a little bit of suspect. I was just looking at their fixtures for the next few game weeks. Even if they do double in game week 31,
Hmm.
next of their four fixtures are away games,
Hmm.
and then Manchester United at home, Brighton at home. Not necessarily clean sheet fixtures,
Hmm.
right? I mean, of course, Newcastle have been great throughout the season, defensively, especially. Uh, but at least in the last few games, they haven't looked that great. Even with Bruno G back, they haven't looked necessarily that great. So I'm not a big fan of tripling up on Newcastle defense, but I can understand why any solver would suggest that with
Hmm.
not blanking in 28, not blanking in 32,
Hmm.
and potentially doubling in 29 and 31, right? So they probably have more fixtures than anyone else over the next few game weeks, right? So that from that standpoint, it makes sense, but I just don't see a lot of clean sheets in the next 4, 5, 6 game weeks. Um, as for the other suspects in this team, I would say Solanke again. He doesn't blank in the next few game weeks. Decent fixtures as well, right? In 29, I think his fixtures is looking okay. Uh, Again, doesn't blank this game week and in 32. So a good pick in isolation. But again, looking at the last few games of the Bournemouth games, I don't necessarily think that he's like the final target of a lot of things, especially when they're sitting back, when they're
Hmm.
counter-attacking. Solanke is kind of dropping deep and helping out with defense and so on. Billing and who's the other guy, Autara, right? They
Hmm.
are getting the fair amount of chances, not as much Solanke. He's still the talisman. I think he's still on penalties, so not the worst of picks. And he'll be involved likely if Bournemouth does score, but I'm not a big fan of that pick either. And the other one that I would say is De Gea at goal. Again, they don't blank in 29. I mean, they of course double in 29. They do blank in 32. So if you are free hitting in 32, he's not a problem because Kepa and De Gea both may blank in 32 potentially, right? So if you don't have a free hit, of course, you don't go that route. You at least have a playing goalkeeper in your wildcard. But if you don't have if you do have your free hit, then it makes sense. But again, without Casemiro out for 4 game weeks right now, right? So I'm not again a big fan of Manchester United defense either. I generally like their defense, absolutely, but again, I don't see a lot of clean sheets happening over the next few games without Casemiro.
Yeah,
So
I do
that's my
agree.
problem.
Yeah, I do agree because
Yeah.
I think without Casemiro, the team's performance does drop. I saw a stat somewhere that they've won about 2.6 points, I think, per game with Casemiro starting, and only 1.7 without
Yeah,
Casemiro. So that itself is a huge difference, and
it's a
he
very
it
difference.
does reduce the defensive appeal. I do agree with that. Apart from that, like Solanke, I guess the other option maybe in that price range is probably Brennan Johnson. Forest
Mhm.
do have probably a better looking double game week 29. Obviously, the fixtures
Right.
after are questionable, and I think they play in 32 if I'm not mistaken.
They
But
do.
yes, so that's another option for anyone who's looking at that specific price range. But
Mhm,
apart
mhm.
from that, uh, I guess the others kind of like pick themselves in terms of picks. Guess
Right.
the triple Newcastle does make sense as to because of the number of games they do have. Um,
Mhm,
Now, you've made a few changes to this, and you come up with something like this as a potential draft.
mhm,
Obviously, the goalkeepers quickly change. You've gone from the triple Newcastle to a single Newcastle. There are more Brighton players as well now. In
mhm.
especially in attack, you've bought in Mitoma, and then you've got Dunk in there just in case because Estupinan is traveling a long distance
Yep.
before the international break, before game week 29. So
Mhm,
probably Dunk is more safer in terms of minutes.
mhm,
Kai Havertz on really good form right now, so he's in there as
mhm.
well. And then I guess it's Madison was in the previous one. Oh, yes, he was there. So
He
it's
was.
yeah, so it's Gabriel in here. Um,
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, so this basically sacrifices a little bit on the 29 double game weekers again, and also you have an additional blank in 28, right? So you have basically 10 playing
Mm.
players in this World Cup draft. But again, I think Arsenal in their current form, their defense could easily outscore the Newcastle defenders, even over their 3 game weeks. So I don't necessarily mind having Gabriel or whatever Arsenal defender you want to have. If you have a budget restraint, even White is not the worst pick. Uh, but I kind of like that starting with an Arsenal defender this week and then playing him in the next week. Of course, what will happen over the next week when we move on to game week 29 will be Saka will potentially become another double game maker. If Again, we'll probably need to see a little more from Manu how deep Bruno Fernandes is playing potentially. I like Bruno as a FPL pick anyways, right? Even if he's playing a little deep, he always creates chances, right? Or he's in the midst of chances. So I don't mind that. So Saka will potentially become Bruno in 29. And then we'll have 14 double game makers. So Gabriel will be the only single game maker. Again, the idea is to bench boost in 29, wildcarding in 28. So I do like that overall as a team better. I think it's kind of putting the eggs in a few different baskets as well. I like the Havertz pick. Again, Chelsea have looked decent from an attacking perspective in the recent weeks. James could easily become Fofana, right? Because again, there is probably a little bit of suspect regarding James's minutes. Also, the UCL coming around right after game week 30. Uh, and James may not play the mid game week against Liverpool potentially in game week 29. So if you want to go to Fofana, that's a possibility. But overall, I think I like the balance of this team better than what the review draft that we looked at a few minutes ago.
Yep, fair enough. And just I've switched it over to FPL.team just to so I've added your draft in there just to give an idea of
Mhm.
what 29 will look like. So you mentioned okay, again now Saka could potentially become a double game week here. You mentioned Fernandez as one option, and then Gabriel.
Correct.
It's up to you. I guess you can probably play him as well.
Hmm.
Because if you were, let's say, thinking of not free hitting in
Hmm.
32, he does play in that game week as well. So then you could probably save your free hit chip in either
Correct.
34. or another double game week, probably 37, depending on when the doubles fall.
Right.
The other question, looking at this, is are there any players from here that you thought that you might want to switch to someone else, like that you maybe want that you don't have here?
Mm, not necessarily. I mean, forward positions are kind of open, of course, right? So you can go a few different routes for the forwards. All of a sudden, we have a lot of forward options again, right? So yeah, even if someone wants to maybe start with a Harry Kane on wildcard, right? I did talk about that he would be very highly owned in Game Week 29. So if you are risk averse, if you want to kind of avoid that risk, and again in 29 also his single game week fixture is okay. Everton away, uh, probably not a great fixture, but it's an okay fixture to hold him. Or if you want to move on to someone else in 29 potentially, that's the only thing. Or if you again are adventurous enough, if you want to go to an Isak, uh, or as you said before, Brian Johnson, there are a few options in the forward line. I think midfielders speak themselves, right?
Hmm.
You cannot do much with the midfielders. Uh, they are the best picks given the fixtures. And again, defense is something that you can probably play around a little bit with, right? So again, if you don't like double Chelsea defense, you can go to maybe like an Aston Villa defense potentially, or if you like Newcastle defense better, you can double up on Trippier and Schär. Both of them have decent attacking output, so if you like that, you can go there as well. But yeah, that's about it. I don't think I would say probably about 9-10 players kind of pick themselves,
Hmm.
and then you just play around with the other positions a little bit here and there.
Yep, fair enough. So if let's say you didn't work out this week, right, in
Mhm.
28, um, would maybe even 29 be a potential wildcard week, or would it be like 33 after the blank in 32?
Yeah, I've thought about it, and again, it would depend on how much news or information we get after Game Week 29, because some of the things are still kind of floating, right? The
Mm,
third Game Week 31 double is not quite known yet. We'll know how the double game weeks will look like in later in the season, like in Game Week 34 or 37. We'll have better idea about that after the FA Cup games. So a lot of news to come, right? Like before we get to Game Week 29. So I might potentially have to wildcard 29, but the idea would still be to kind of get rid of the bench boost if I can,
mm,
because even without the wildcard, I do get a decent enough bench boost team.
mm.
If I take a couple of hits this week, and even without a hit in game week 29, I can probably I can probably field like 13 doublers in game week 29.
Yep.
So I think that would still be a very decent bench boost, and then just kind of don't worry about your bench anymore for the rest of the season when you wildcard, right? So that's a good thing that I like for the especially in the late part of the season. So I might wildcard in 29 if issues arrive, like if there are like say 3-4 players in my team who have injuries, and IB always does that, right? Like a lot of your players should be yellow flagged, red flagged, etc. So you can never foresee that. So if that happens, then I might wildcard. But the idea would be to wildcard either on game week 30 or 33 potentially. So that's my current thought process. If I don't wildcard this week in 28, most likely to wildcard in either 30 or 33.
Yep. So they, and I think I should mention this as well. Like, obviously, again, before this is still before while the Champions League fixtures are going on, Europa League fixtures are going on, there will also
Right.
be the draw for the Champions League and Europa League fixtures this Friday. And depending on how that draw goes, we could see rotation in game week 31 because the Champions League and Europa League fixtures are around those two legs are
31,
basically,
32.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So depending on how City, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, maybe
Mhm.
Liverpool managed to do a magical turnaround. Um,
Yeah.
we don't know, so we could see rotation in that specific week as well.
True.
But yeah, so far this is what you've come up with. Any final thoughts maybe on wildcard or where you at right
Yeah,
now?
I mean, yeah, I think if you are not liking taking too many hits, I think wildcard is a decent way to go. And again, I think the reason that I held off on wildcarding in 26 or 27 was basically because I had a couple of Liverpool players that I wanted to play in the Bournemouth game that didn't necessarily go well, but they did get the points against Manchester United, so that kind of averaged out, I would say. So I would say to some extent I got lucky there, but again, it over the two game weeks, if you think of it, will probably somewhat deserve the points. And then also, I didn't quite like the Brentford defense, double defense. I know a lot of game week 26 and potential 27 double game weeks went for Brentford double defense with Raya and another defender. I didn't necessarily like that. I know I included Raya here. Again, I'm not a big fan of that either. But again, you can go for any double game week goalkeeper potentially. So that was another reason that I held off. But if you are taking, still having to take too many hits in game week 28, I would say up to -8, it's probably just about okay. Anything more than that, I think you just wildcard essentially, right? Anything -12 territory, you wildcard, or if you free hit potentially, right? So it depends again on how your team would look like in game week 32, etc. Because even if you free hit this week, you are probably going to have a lot of
Mm,
Brighton and Man United players that you won't have playing in 32 potentially. Again, we don't know that for sure yet, but most likely outcome of the FA Cup. So if that happens, then you probably want to save your free hit for that. So yeah, I am not disliking wildcarding in Game 28. It kind of sets you up nicely for the rest of the season. The only caveat is the international break again,
mm,
right? So you are kind of wildcarding just before the international break, uh, where you probably can have more information just past the IB, right, in a couple of weeks. So that's the only caveat, I think. Otherwise, I think there are a lot of good things about the wildcard in Game 28.
yep, fair enough. So that's basically it. We did this do I did record a free hit video as well for those who haven't watched it. It should be on the channel. It was with FPL Sidenet and FPL Point Break. One final question I'll ask you for specifically for Game Week 28,
Mhm.
captaincy. Is Saka probably the best option, or would
Yeah, I
Kane
think
be a decent?
it's between Saka and Kane. I think Saka's recent form is a little bit of suspect. I think a
Mm,
lot of people may not go there just because of his recent form. I think probably just if you want to captain an Arsenal player, even Martinelli or Odegaard are not the worst captains if you do have them, of course. Uh, but yeah, if the only Arsenal player that you have is Saka, he's a pretty good captain. I think he has been looking like a little leggy over
mm,
the last couple of games. He always carries a little bit of niggle also, right? So that's probably what's impacting his game a little bit. But again, in isolation, he's a great captain. Uh, but I think Kane will be heavily captain as
mm,
well, right? So again, it depends on how risk averse you are, but it's very likely that he'll be 140, 150% you.
mm,
And I think he is a good captaincy shout against Southampton. He generally tends to do well against Southampton historically as well. But yeah,
yep.
I think it's between them two. If you are really adventurous, you might want to captain maybe someone like a Chilwell. But yeah,
Mm,
that's a.
yeah, I would also add, depending on how the Brentford game goes,
Mhm,
Tony against Leicester, you never know,
mhm.
would be a decent option as well.
Very good fixture. Yeah,
Yep,
very good fixture. Yep,
yep.
absolutely.
Cool. So that's basically it. Thank you, FPL Kante, Awi, for joining me today. Do you have anything to plug?
No, not necessarily. So we haven't been doing APL Radar for the last few months, just busy with life, all three of us. But yeah, hopefully we'll be back someday and we'll be making APL content again. Other than that, yeah, good luck with everyone's game week.
Thank you. I will add the links in the description to follow FPL content on Twitter as well as the YouTube channel FPL Under the Radar as well. So once again, finally, thank you to FPL content for joining us. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button as well, and let me know in the comments: are you wildcarding this week or are you playing the free hit this week? And if you aren't doing either, what are you doing this week? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, once again, thank you.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever try.